should be paying more attention to. So the first one is to have a differentiated approach to literacy development, so that the teacher is able to meet the diverse needs of the children effectively. And how we can do that is to have an inclusion of home language in the instruction inside the classroom. And the second one is creation and access to diverse content which is contextualized. Like we were talking since morning, Tamil Nadu cannot, the content and is very different than the northern states. So that's one thing, focus area to look at. The second one is to have an inclusive and sensitive teaching practices, gender neutral, should not make any gender, caste, creed, religion. So how we can do that is to first have a training, have a gender inclusive or equal training opportunities to the children. And the third is to address the learning barriers that the children face. Not just have a classroom as a learning space, but also create some other co-creating learning spaces in the school. Moving to the second broad domain, which is on the classroom instructions. So instructions, how does the teacher deliver in the classroom? What we found is the teacher-led activities predominantly dominates the student-led activities in the class. I'll need 2 more minutes, please. Okay. So, and within the literacy activities, it was mainly oral language development that the teachers were focusing on, as opposed to the independent reading time. So, only 20% of the teachers, they give independent reading time. However, the activities which is actually student-led, student doing some writing work, student writing on the blackboard, students working in the small groups, it was all least emphasized. If we can see the last 4 buckets from 25, 23, 18 and 15%. So in the classroom, it's the teacher-led activities which dominates the student-led activities that we saw. Coming to the instruction materials. So while we were analyzing the data, so we had these different kind of materials that the teacher and the student uses. So this question came to our mind that what matters more? Is it the teacher guides or how teacher guides, right? So what we saw is less than half of the teachers were using the teacher guide, and only 1/4 of the classrooms where students were using any kind of student workbook. That doesn't mean teacher doesn't know how to effectively deliver the instruction. So what, so what actually matters? So that's a question which I think requires more, another research for us to answer this question. Okay, coming to the informal assessment, I'll just tell you what is the key takeaway from here. So in the classroom, teachers does give a very an informal, they do have an informal Q&A to gauge students' understanding, but the elements of formal assessment practices, which is checking students' knowledge, what they have learned in the previous class, giving them feedback in writing, having a timely and consistent feedback, giving a periodic test, all of this is still lacking and we need to work here. So it's an informal practices, but what Nipun says is a comprehensive formative assessments, that's something which is not emphasized here. So coming to, what we looked at, that what was seen and what was said, there was some mismatch between what teachers said and what we saw. So in terms of child-friendly attributes, we looked at 6 indicators. Of these 6 indicators, only 28% of the classrooms we saw that all these 6 child-friendly attributes were available. There are 16% of the classrooms where child-friendly characteristics or attributes were absent. So teachers do understand the importance of having these attributes in the classrooms, but it wasn't seen much. It was really observed in these classes. Likewise, we have mentioned this before, so when we look at the instructions, what teachers said and what we observed, there was mismatch between them. So I'll just give you an example, like asking, so here teacher did mention that we should encourage group work or students working in small groups because it is important instruction strategy. However, what we observed is only 18% of the classrooms this was actually happening. So where we are headed to? So we asked the teachers that what is required for you as a professional development. So the first thing very prevalent came is the trainings and the workshops, followed by the peer collaboration. But what kind of trainings? So it has to be a need-based training is what the teachers mentioned to us. Where is the need? So the need is that we struggle to conduct assessments inside the classrooms, which we also saw, and also in the classroom management, because there are multiple students sitting from multiple grades, multiple levels, diverse needs, multilingual languages. So there is a problem in the classroom management that we struggle. And of course, third one is the pedagogy. So again, so what we have been talking since morning is to have a need-based training and not us decide what teachers needs training on, is something that also was reiterated in our study. Hence, it is important to see not just the visibles, which is tangible and easy to measure, but also the invisibles, the culture, the beliefs, attitudes, the empathy, inside the classrooms. So this is just the conclusion. So I'm not going to repeat the left side, but we would also like to acknowledge the limitations of the study, that the sample is small. So we are not saying कि MP में ऐसा ही होता है या यहाँ ऐसा होता है. It's the sample is so small. So we are only talking about those 80 schools. Second one is observation does come with a social desirability bias. So what I'm seeing is, and what I'm practicing, and if I know somebody is observing me, I may be, giving a very favorable actions and elements on the day of observation. So we acknowledge that. And the third one is the school selection, because we are into the you-do model where the government has all the control. Government gave us the list of schools that you go to these schools and do your study. So that's something that we would like to acknowledge. And these are the key takeaways which I've already mentioned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nayan, for your presentation. Now let's open the floor for answers. Just 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you for this lovely presentation. My question is on the last slide where you mentioned the limitations. Just in terms of your personal observation or your personal sense, the second point that you mentioned under limitations, in what ways do you think exactly this was biased? Because actually it showed that there was not much group work done and a lot of written work was given, there was a lot of lecture from the teacher. So could you also read that as this is what they think is what they need to be doing, and that if you actually ask children to do their work, it's you not doing your job? So just a little bit, anything you want to say on the limitations with?
Yeah, so on the social desirability bias, we did not see it much in the study that was happening. But of course, I couldn't visit all 80 schools, right? But it's just that it's an observation, comes with an observation as a method, that it may have a social desirability bias. But having said that, still we didn't see all the 8 components of literacy being conducted on the day of observation. Still only 20% of the classrooms we saw the independent reading time was given. Small work to students were not given, only 18% of the classrooms. So yes, so it's not really like very starking in the study, because they were doing what they were usually doing. We wanted to acknowledge it because observation comes as a method, may come with this, element.